All right, and welcome back. We're here at the Pro Athlete Interview Series. We're actually at our live event here in New York. I'm glad you could be here, Zach.
Thanks for having me.
So I guess before we get started, why don't we find out, because maybe some people don't know about your professional background in the sports space, in the finance space. So why don't you give us like a little bit of an insight of where you came from, what you've done up to this point now, and we can kind of dig into that a little bit.
Sure. All right. So I'll stay high level, and then it'll be on you to double click on what sounds interesting.
Done.
So I graduated college in 2015. I went to a little Division II Catholic school up in Massachusetts. Had an NFL dream, but I knew everything about the NFL. The NFL didn't know everything about me, so it was a long road. Realized I needed a job to fund that dream. So I worked at Fidelity Investments, sold mutual funds for 4 years, cut my teeth trying to sell to Long Island people. So being in New York, if you try to sell anyone to anyone in New York, you better have something valuable real quick. So that was a really good place to start. And long story short, I just took a step forward every year, and it was a cup of coffee with the Texans and the Patriots. And then they'd ultimately say no. And then it was the Jets, and then ultimately they would say no too. And then the next year it was the Packers, and they said no as well. And luckily I just stuck it out, and that one more push, I was about to quit, push forward a little bit. There's a little bit more to that story, but the Buccaneers eventually called, and at 28 years old was one of the oldest NFL rookies in history to bust through and make it. And I've been there ever since. So 5 years going into my 6th year. And because I didn't know if I was going to get there in the first place, never mind how long I was going to be, I just made sure that each off season I would stay up to date on finances and interests and off-field activities. One of those things was the private equity space, which I've been doing for the past couple of years with Delcam, which is a private equity firm based in New England by cash flowing manufacturing companies.
Okay, and I guess it's very interesting because I think a lot of times when someone gets a no, they're like, oh man, it might crush them inside, either mentally or it might be their soul, and they're like, man, what am I doing? But if you heard that, like, what actually made you make those different steps of like, you know what, I know they told me no, but you're not telling yourself no because you kept going. So like, what was that? Was that goal setting? Was it just like mental strategies that you're using? Or you're just like, oh, that doesn't mean anything because they don't know you like you said? Or what were you able to do to get past that no and I guess just keep telling yourself yes?
Yeah, so I think one of the hardest things to do is I don't want to, like, I've gone through the experience, and that's easy to, like, backtrack and be like, oh, yeah, this is why I was doing all these things. So I'm trying to put my hat back on, like, okay, it's 2017. I've been going at this for a couple of years. Like, why are you still doing this? And I just gave myself 2 North Stars, and one of them was if I'm taking a step forward every year, then I'm going to keep going. And whenever that first step comes that's backwards, okay, we're going to hang it up, and that's okay. And fortunately, I took a step forward every year. They were pretty small steps at first, but that was something that was one of my North Stars. And then 2, this was something that I just loved. Like I was the kid growing up that had all the NFL jerseys. Being in Massachusetts, you don't necessarily have a college team. So it was all Patriots all the time. It was NFL, everything. And I think that seed of passion for me allowed me to be like, you know what, I'm going to go after this thing. And if it fails, that's okay. Like this journey for me is worthwhile, even if I fail. So just having those 2 things side by side, I was really fortunate to have that mindset. I don't think it was like a cognitive, this is how I'm going to structure it thing, like I said, but looking back on it, it was really those 2 North Stars that just helped me keep going.
And that was like at the start of each year, you're like, all right, these are my North Stars and they haven't changed? Or did you keep reassessing based on the season? Or like when did you set those North Stars if you're looking back and putting that hat on?
So I had a coach. I was really fortunate to have this coach. So his name was Bob Chesney. He came into my life when I was at Assumption. He then he won everything when he was at Assumption, went on to Holy Cross, won everything there. Now he's the head coach at JMU. He's going to win everything there too. And I remember he called me as I was, kind of putting my foot in this door for the NFL, and I was, giving it a shot. And he called me one day. He goes, Zach, are you just kind of trying this out, or are you going to make it to the NFL? And that was the first time someone had positioned that to me in a way that needs to be committed. So he was like, hey, are you just kind of figuring this thing out and giving it a shot like everyone else, or are you going to do this thing? And that was the first time that I was able to articulate outside of my own head, like, no, coach, I'm going to make this thing. And I remember I'm at my mom's house. I'm in the second floor. I remember exactly where he called me, and I remember exactly the words I used, because that was the point where I had committed to, okay, if I take a step forward every time, then I'm going to keep at this thing. And it was, I've just been so blessed to have people come into my life and challenge me, not in the sense that like when you think of someone challenges you, it's like almost like a push down and a push back, but it was a push up and a push forward. And I've just been really fortunate to have those people in my life.
Okay, and I guess something that's very interesting with your story is we've done some of these interviews, and for these athletes, perhaps they've been a professional athlete for 1 year, 2 year, 10 years, and then when they get towards the end of their career, whether they decide to leave or maybe that choice was made for them, they kind of have to reposition and think through, like, what am I going to do next? Like, what am I without this sport? It came up on a panel yesterday. So I guess for you, you sort of had a background before going into the sport, and that's very rare. Like, do you have any advice for someone that, let's say, wasn't in that same situation where they know what they might want to do after the fact? Like, what kind of advice could you give to someone that's looking to make that transition, whether it's forced upon them or they're choosing? Like, what kind of advice would you give to someone that way?
So I sit on the advisory committee for the NFLPA. I'm very active with players that are in the league and guys that are in that transition period. And I give that context because this issue is very prevalent. It's just one of those soft spots in my heart. And one of the great foundational pieces that I got working at Fidelity was being in sales. Like, you have to just go play in traffic and be okay with that. And like, there's gonna be a ton of micro losses, and you just at the macro level realize that like, that's kind of how you take that step forward. So long-winded reasoning as to like, I was just comfortable playing in traffic. So every off season that came up, every off day that came up, every new city that I went into, I was like, there's gotta be a couple people here that I could learn from. So I would just reach out to them and say, hey, I don't need a job, I don't need any money, but you're pretty interesting. I'd love to grab you a coffee. And like, I just did that over and over and over. And every off season I would do that. And that allowed me to like stumble into areas that I realized I didn't like to do, and then stumble into areas that I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I really enjoyed that. But one of the other things is, as you're transitioning, let's say you played 5-10 years, whatever it is, every year your coach, the front office, is trying to do everything that they can to keep you from doing those off-field activities. And
Keep you focused.
they want to keep you focused, which is totally reasonable. However, that's at the detriment of your career and your transition and your life beyond football. Because I can guarantee you one thing: when you're done playing, the Bucs have a really good front office, and the GM, they do care about you. With that said, though, it's a business. So once you're outside of that business, they can still care about you, but it's not going to be the same. And those phone calls stop coming, and the attention and focus goes to that next cohort of players that come in. So I just realized that early on, and at my rookie year is 28, so I had a little bit more maturity just to realize those type of things. But I fell victim to that my first couple of years, and then into COVID, it was like, okay, don't do these ventures, don't do, X, Y, or Z because it's football, football, football. And I think that there's some merit to that, and I understand it. But again, it comes at the detriment of your transition in your career beyond football. And I think that's one of the reasons why guys have a hard time with it.
Okay, and I guess for a final question, and it might be you playing in the street, dodging those cars, or it might be you doing the things off season which weren't just focused on your sport, and you're sort of holistically improving yourself constantly. But what was some way that you're able to outcompete those around you? And maybe it's doing those things that no one else was thinking about doing them yet, and you're like, oh man, I already have it like planned out for yourself. Like, how do you become in that 0.1%, not just on the field, but now off the field? Like, are those the same suggestions you would give to a player now, is to do those things while they're currently in their career, or start thinking about those goals or setting those North Stars, or what's the final advice that way?
This one's funny. So you're often positioned as like, don't compete, or no, not competition. Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
Right. So if you compare yourself with someone, then that's not really what you want to do. But I compared myself with everyone. Like, when I was trying to get into the NFL, like, what do those guys look like? All right, 6'3", 245. Okay, I can get to that. What are their snap times? Okay, I could get to that. How are they blocking someone? I can get to that. So in business, I was doing the same thing. Is like, what is that guy doing off the field? Okay, I want to do that. Or like, what is this guy doing in the locker room that's working for him? Like, okay, I want to go do that. So like, I would compare and then go engage. I think maybe a comparison without that engagement is probably like that void that's created. Yeah. But I would go up to everyone, and there's a blueprint already existing. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm just trying to learn what that wheel is. So I got fortunate with guys in the locker room. I was like, okay, I'm going to go talk to him and ask what he's doing. Okay, this person's really interesting. I'm going to go ask what he's doing. And like, I don't have to reinvent anything. I just find someone that's done it successful already, and then just follow that path. So the comparison part is is something I think is actually a strength.
Yeah, and I think it's just how you position it, your perspective. And once again, you might be comparing, but you're like, okay, I'm going to do my spin on it. I need to make it fit for me. And it's not just, oh, I want to look like him. You're like, okay, I'm going to be my version of him, right?
Exactly.
I love that. Well, Zach, thanks so much for coming on. Thanks for being here in New York. Hopefully we'll see you at one of our future events.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Love it. Thank you.